Alaric Moses Ong. It is good to have you here in Ecomonics. How you doing this evening? How you feeling?
I'm doing great, all the way from Singapore.
Yeah, it's 10 a.m. for me, and it is 10 p.m. for you. So a pure 12-hour difference between the two of us. I gotta say, it is crazy, just like how good the internet is at this point. The time delay, and yet it feels like no time passes at all between my message here to you. Light, speed of light. I don't know how it works, but I'm thankful for it.
Yeah,
Great. Well, I know that I've got you for some time, but I don't have you for forever. So let's jump right into this. I was really happy to see some of the work that you've done. You've definitely built a great profile for yourself in some regards, and we're going to have you be the fella to let us know about it. So, opening question: tell us what you do and what you're up to these days.
okay, great. So basically, I've done 5 different businesses before. Right now, I run a coaching and seminar business. So I've got about 1,500 paid clients where I train them on sales, marketing, and branding. Yeah. And then, like, on the side, I own a few businesses that just pay me a bit of passive income here and there. Businesses that are my students or my clients, and then I invest in them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So people who study under you, if the business goes well enough, then you can
Yeah.
invest in them afterwards. Yeah, that's not a bad system, and I can see that also incentivizes the students too. If it motivates them that if this goes well enough, then I can actually gain the favor of senpai, and next thing I know, it's now something that is being invested in.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's so many different things that I want to ask you about, because you've like you said, you branch out into a lot of different areas, and one thing that I don't get to talk to too many people about is their own interview that they do. You're an interviewer as well. To be fair, I do talk to quite a few people, many of whom do interviews, but we don't get too much into it. And what I was impressed by was, I guess, not to denigrate the people that I talk to, but like the caliber of the guests that you brought onto the show. It's impressive. There's some world leader people who you've interviewed with. So one thing I'd like to know is, I guess, at like what point did you get to when you started doing these interviews? And I'd like to hear some of the process that you go through when you're securing these guests and bringing them onto your program.
Sounds good. Okay. So maybe I just give you a bit of context first. So
Sounds
the
good.
people I've interviewed are people like Lauren Ridinger, who is the co-founder of Shop.com, which is a billion-dollar company. People like Hartlin Ray, they have 5.7 million followers on TikTok. People like Hofit Golan, she's a travel influencer with like 2.7 million verified followers on Instagram. Spectacular Smith, the founder of Grumpy Cat, which is a $100 million brand. Like George Ross, who was the former right-hand man of Donald Trump, and then right now he is the like George Ross, yeah. So he's also the coach of JT Fox. I've also interviewed like JT Fox, Richard Tan. Richard Tan is the founder of Success Resources, $100 million company, right? Okay, so I would say when I first started interviewing, it was not as easy. Like when I first started interviewing, I didn't get this high caliber people, and I think the first high caliber person I kind of got was George Ross, right? And I kind of paid for it. So I paid for something else, and that an interview with him was part of it, right? And the thing about interviews is that once you interview a few high caliber people, everyone else wants to be interviewed by you, yeah, because like of the branding by association and all that. And one thing I do for all the people that I interview is that I brand them alongside all the other people that I've interviewed. So for example, when I do an interview, I'll show myself interviewing them, and then after that I'll show a video of me interviewing like Marcos Moore, who makes $120 million a year, George Ross, and all these other speakers, and then after that I show myself with them. So when their audience looks at this interview, they will be thinking, well, if Alaric Ong interviews all these other successful people, and now Alaric Ong interviews this person, therefore this person must also be at the same level or the same caliber. Yeah. So for me, it's very simple. When I first started interviewing was because of Clubhouse. So like I saw some people's profiles on Clubhouse, and then I just reached out to them on Instagram, right? And then I just message them, and I say, hey, my template is I have a standard template, right? So my template is always like, hey, I listen to you on Clubhouse and receive a lot of value. And I was wondering if you'd be open to doing a free interview where you could share about your entrepreneurship journey with my audience. I've interviewed other people like, I've interviewed other people like, and I put all the people that I've interviewed, like maybe the top 6 or something, because I've interviewed like 20 to like maybe about 40 people, right, so far. And then after that I say, yeah, so will you be open to a free interview? And most of the time, like maybe about 50% of them will say yes, or maybe 30% of them will say yes. Some people, they don't read my message because like when you message someone on Instagram, it appears in the messaging request. So for example, like one of the interviewees, Hofit Golan, she replied me 2 months later because it never went through to her main box. But we managed to do the interview, and she shared like how she grew her Instagram to 2.7 million verified followers, which was quite interesting, and I've learned a lot from that. Yeah. So so that's basically my whole process for how I interview people. Yeah.
And one of the so one thing that I perceive with the show here, and the audience will have to forgive me, every now and then we get meta, but take it or leave it, is sometimes the caliber of our guest lifts us up, but then all the times I do feel this obligation for the show to lift up others. Like we do have so many people who are maybe starting out, they're succeeding and they're doing well. We don't talk to anybody who's not succeeding, but not everybody has that same prestige that Debutify as like a default has. So in your view, is there I guess like a barrier for entry or a certain caliber that you want to stick to in order to, I guess, protect the reputation of everybody who's come through your doors?
Correct. So I only approach people for interviews. People don't approach me for interviews. And I've had people asking me whether I can interview them, which I've rejected before. Yeah. Or sometimes I charge for interviews. So for example, like and it's a pretty interesting concept that I learned from another mentor who did it as well. And what he does is he charges me like $5,000 or $30,000 to interview them, right? Because he's a pretty high level guy, right? And when he interviews people, now everyone will start thinking, if this person interviews them, that means they must be a somebody, right? So sometimes I charge for interviewing, but very, very seldom. Most of the time it's free. So I only approach people that, so if I approach someone, that means I have the thought that if they say yes, I'll interview them. Yeah, I won't ever approach someone who I don't think I'm going to interview. In terms of barriers to entry, I would kind of research them a little bit first, and just to see if the claims that, because everyone is a millionaire on Clubhouse, everyone is a 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure billionaire on Clubhouse, right? So it's very important to see whether like, is that really true? Is that consistent, across their social media channels and all that kind of stuff? And so in terms of barrier to entry, I'm quite selective about that. Yeah.
And so one of the things that I'd like to get your take on too is the preparation process. And so I'm happy to reveal how I do it. I usually, so our producer, she will collect the information, come up with the questions she can come up with. And then I spend 30 minutes just because I've only got so much time on the clock to do it. And I just, I listen to the interview, to other interviews, other content, and I come up with, I usually shoot for about 20 questions because my philosophy is I always want to run out of time. I don't want to run out of questions. So that's what I go into, because I just always want to know that I'm as prepared as possible. And thankfully, as I'm learning things, it's become easier to just kind of go with the flow of the conversation. But our audience can see, like, if they go back to the very beginning, they can kind of see like, it's gotten more off topic. Like in one of the early episodes, I asked the ecom kid, "Oh, what would you name your kid?" Like, okay, at a certain point, we stopped talking about stuff like that. I'm interested in knowing is what you do to get to be prepared. Like, how do you set up your questions, stuff like that. Happy to just really hear about it.
Good questions. Okay, so for me, because interviews aren't really my main, like I don't make any money from doing interviews. But I do learn a lot of stuff, and I do get a lot of value from doing interviews, but I don't make any money from interviews, right? So it's not my main source of income. So even like, unlike you who do it so professionally, for me, I kind of like haphazard, like I wouldn't say haphazardly, but I don't put as much effort into each interview. So my process is very simple. I'll just copy a bio from, let's say, their website or something, or I'll ask them for their bio, right? They'll just tell me their bio. I'll just introduce them. And sometimes I think of maybe a few questions, maybe 3 questions, 5 questions, and then most of the time I just flow on from there. So like while they're speaking, there will always be new questions that come up, and then I just like I just flow on from there. Yeah. So I actually have like a Google Docs where I type the questions down, like because during the interview, when you are thinking of the question, it's very hard to pay attention to them. So what I like to do is I just when I think of the question, I'll just type it on Google Docs, and then once they are done, because I don't want to interrupt them, right? So once they're done, then I will ask the next question. When it comes to editing, I barely edit much. Most of the time, I just take the video, right? I take out the video, right? I have an interview intro and an interview outro. Okay, so the interview intro is like about 20 seconds where I show like myself interviewing all the other speakers, like all the other entrepreneurs. And the outro is about 2 minutes where I show myself interviewing all the other entrepreneurs, but like it's a 2-minute version of the video. So whenever I take a video, all I do is I get the video, right? I split the maybe first 30 seconds where I introduce them, and then I put the intro, okay? And then it's the content, which I normally don't even edit the content at all. Maybe I'll put the name of the speaker, that's all for 20 seconds, like maybe a text, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't edit the content at all. And then I just put the outro, and then I just render. Yeah. So that process takes me maybe about 10 minutes. And then I upload it to YouTube. And I will actually do this thing called like keyword. I have a software that churns out keywords for me. So my purpose is that I want it such that when they search that influencer's name or that entrepreneur's name, they will find my video in maybe the first page of YouTube. So I have this software that churns out keywords for me so that it will rank the video onto YouTube. And then I pay someone to design the thumbnails for me. And normally she will design the thumbnail about 1 week later or 2 weeks later. But I'll just post the video first, and when
the thumbnails are ready, they come in.
Yeah, so I just post. So normally when I do an interview, within 2 hours it's up on YouTube, or sometimes at the most, if I take a while, to maybe 2 days. Yeah, but never longer than that.
So just so the audience and I guess you too understand, we're not going to spend like all day talking about interviews, but just being an interview myself, I wanted an opportunity to compare some notes, and it is an important part of the of not only the e-commerce industry, but frankly any industry. So I was just curious about this. A couple more things that I want to cover about this, and then we'll shift gears. So if you want to keep this, if you know the name of the software, I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if it comes to you, I'd love to hear. Feel free to send me an email on that one. But that is important, right? Figuring out what the keywords are, and if the software can help that speed that along, that's great. And one point that I just wanted to acknowledge is, I mean, yeah, like it's a great deal of my profession is interviewing, so I have that approach to it. Some of it does have to do with the fact that, like, while I am building my e-commerce presence, I'm working on my own store. I have a reputation with this company. I have not gotten to your level, like full disclosure. So I think having more organic experience does make it easier for you to understand what the nature of the conversation is, and I think the questions come more naturally to you that way.
Okay, so to be honest, I only started interviewing people about less than 6 months ago. Yeah, so I only started interviewing people when Clubhouse came out. Before that, I probably did like maybe 2 interviews in the last 3 years. Yeah. When it comes to thinking of what questions to ask, most of the time I ask it from my perspective, which means I take it that if it's gonna be valuable for me, it's gonna be valuable for my audience. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So like some people, they try to dumb down the interview, like to cater to the masses, to cater to the audience. But for me, I do the interview in a so sometimes, let's say there's something on my mind. Let's say, for example, when I interviewed Lauren Ridinger, okay, she owns a co-founder of $1 billion company, shop.com, right? So what was at the back of my mind was, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm thinking of like, do I want to take on more? Like, I'm thinking of, should I retire or should I continue scaling? And if I continue scaling, I might have to take on debt and raise capital, and there's risk. Whereas I could play it safe and just use the cash I have right now, and kind of like just have a very chill entrepreneurship journey. And when I talked to Lauren Ridinger, and she told me that she built $1 billion company without raising any capital, without taking on any debt, that just blew my mind, right? Yeah. So that gave me a paradigm shift, and that solved a present problem, like a present thought or a present question that I have always wanted to ask. Yeah. And sometimes like, I ask them about what's their morning routine, and they tell me, hey, they don't have a morning routine, you know, and it shocks me, like, because I myself don't really have a morning routine. So now I know that, okay, if Marcos Moura, who makes $120 million per year, doesn't have a morning routine, maybe I can still build $120 million per year business without a morning routine. Yeah. So I always ask questions based on what questions I have, right? And to me, it's kind of like a conversation. So I never ever run out of questions. Yeah, there's sometimes where I don't vibe well with the interviewee. Maybe sometimes because like the connection of the audio, or sometimes it just doesn't vibe well. So I will end the interview in like maybe 20 minutes or 15 minutes. Sometimes those that vibe well, we can do like 1 hour. Yeah. So so that has never been an issue. To me, it's just like having a normal conversation, and just to answer the questions that I already have in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like the other question that I had regarding this segment of our episode here was like, what are some of the major takeaways or some things that really stick out to you in your mind? And I appreciate that it has to do with a lot of like, where you are in your journey and how that reflects the questions that you want to ask somebody. And yeah, it is kind of a surprise to hear that like some people who are at that level, they're that successful, and they don't necessarily have a morning routine. And I guess my takeaway to that is that there really is every kind of person out there on the planet. And let's just say, for instance, I discover somebody, I haven't yet, but let's just say I discover somebody whose day very much so reflects my day. That would be the kind of person that I would want to take more advice from, because there's already a lot of similarities between their mindset and my mindset. So a lot of it is just exploration. And one of the things that I've been trying to do is endear each guest to the audience so the audience can decide, I really connected with that person. That's the person whose advice I want to take, not just on this, but on whatever else there is. It's about finding people that we have similarities to. The universe expands out, and everybody it's the philosophical idea that everybody that we meet is somewhat of a reflection of ourselves, but some people reflect us more than others. It's certainly true in dating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about interviews, one thing I love about the internet is that it allows us to connect with people, from the other side of the world, which last time would have never been possible. Yeah. And I think it's just amazing. Like for me, sometimes I read a book and then I just message the guy and say, hey, I just read your book, would love to interview you. And he actually comes on the show. For example, like let's say Brett Sugars. My mom has heard of Action Coach. She has signed up for Action Coach for maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but she's never met Brett Sugars before. But like but through interviews, I was able to connect with them. So to me, even though I don't make much money from doing interviews, but in terms of the network, in terms of the knowledge, and in terms of creating value for the audience, because it does these three things for me, that's what allows me to continue doing interviews. But right now I don't really look out for doing interviews. Like I'm not so much on Clubhouse anymore. But if once in a while, if a good guest appears, like once in a while, if I think of a good guest, right, I would just message them, and I'll just try my luck. Like I've messaged a lot of billionaires. I've even messaged people like Human Fatita and all this kind of stuff. Of course, some of them don't reply, but that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to listen to the one. I forget his name, but he was the right hand man of Donald Trump.
George Roth, yeah.
Josh Roth, yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a fan of Trump. So it's just to listen to somebody by proxy, that would be a good one for me. So I gotta make a note of that. All right, cool. So we're shifting gears. So this next one that I wanted to ask you about, we'll see how this goes. This could be a granular thing. This could be a philosophical thing. Could be a mix. But one of the messages that you put out that I really took to is a system where everybody wins, whether that's an economic system or well, actually, if it's not an economic system, then who knows what else it could be. So clearly, economics would have to be a huge factor into this. So there's a philosophy side of it. I'd like to hear where this came from within you, and is there a pragmatic approach to this? Are there tangible things that we can do, whether that's locally or even on a global scale, to create this system? Because all things having an opposite or an equal reaction, if there are winners, then can there be a system of winners without losers?
Got it. So okay, to give a bit of context to the audience, so my vision is a world where everyone wins. Okay, so I want to create a world where everyone wins, And my mission is to empower people to become the best versions of themselves. Okay. Now, where I get this concept of a world where everyone wins was during a seminar. There was one time there was a seminar, and one of the games in the seminar was people asking each other, like, okay, so you have a partner, right? And then you ask the person, what do you want? What do you want, right? And some people say, oh, money, or success, or I want to help my parents, respect, and all this kind of stuff. But for me, what really resonated with me was where I want a world where everyone wins. Okay. And that was something that electrified me, and it makes me feel alive. If I can create a world where everyone wins, it makes me feel alive. Okay. Now, is that possible? That's absolutely possible. If you look at it, okay, human beings now, okay, are way healthier. We are living longer. We are richer than 500 years ago. Okay, 500 years ago, right? Okay, or let's say if you look at the caveman days, people have to go and hunt for a rabbit. People have to, right now you can make money from the internet. Right now you can make money by opening up your laptop and making money, right? That's never been possible before in like 500 years ago. If you have a phone right now, you have more technology than what the president of the United States had 100 years ago. Okay, all he had was a telephone, right? So so if you look at it, human beings now are wealthier. There's more of us. We are living longer. This might be debatable, but we are happier. Some people say, oh, last time we were happier. I'm not sure. Do you think in Cold Wars and all that we were happier? I'm not sure. Okay, but I think that we are generally happier as a whole. So it's definitely possible to create a world where everyone wins, where everything is win-win. Okay, and one of the ways to do that, right, is a business philosophy that I have, where every business deal that I do, I want it to be win-win. Okay, and to the point where I actually want the other person to win more than I win. Okay, so every sales offer that I sell, every product that I sell, every business deal that I do, everything that I do, it has to be win-win. Okay, now, so it cannot be they win, I lose. Okay, because that's not sustainable. It cannot be I win and they lose. If that's the case, I don't even want to do the deal. Okay, I don't want to win at someone else's expense, right? It has to be win-win. Okay, and I don't mind the other person winning more than me. Okay, now, why I start coming up with this is because I realized, right, that whenever I try to win more than the other person, okay, the total people that end up doing business with me shrinks. Okay, because like, let's say if I always want to, if it's win-win, I always want to win more than the other person, maybe I can only partner up with 5 people. But maybe because I'm willing to let the other person win more, okay, they win $10, I win $1, that's fine, so long as I still win, right? But this allows me to be able to partner up with 500 more people. So in net, I still win more than someone who's only willing to win more than the other person. Yeah. So I think that's a philosophy. So I always and Gary Vee does talk about it as well, about 51-49 relationships. So in every relationship that I go into, I expect to give 51 and only receive 49. Okay, because if both people expect to win more than the other person, that relationship won't be sustainable, right? But if both people in the relationship are willing to give more than they get, okay, and the other person is also willing to give more than they get, both will be very happy in the relationship. It's a lot more sustainable that way. So it's definitely possible to create a win-win scenario. In fact, win-win-win, and like where the in an economic model where the investors win, the employees win, the customers win, and yeah, so it's definitely possible. It's done before, yeah.
And there are some, I mean, there's some things that I've addressed on the show very, very early on, because I think for a lot of people who are consciously aware and have access to the internet of what goes on in the world, we hear about the conditions that people endure when they're making iPhones or sweatshops, and we hear about parts of the world where things just aren't very agreeable, just to put it charitably. And one area that I'd like to explore briefly, and by the way, I have looked into this more, and I've gotten a little bit more of an insight into it, in that there are different groups that are keeping their eyes on this, and so it's not like that this is hidden in the shadows. It's actually quite open, and it's one of the reasons that motivates people to think a little bit more carefully about who they do business with. So, for instance, you hear about some of the conditions that people have had when they're working at Amazon. And when we hear that and we think, you know what, that actually makes me a little less inclined to order at Amazon, makes me a little bit more motivated to look for an individual brand, for somebody who's a little bit more motivated to create a more win-win scenario, where even though they sell a product, they also provide content, they provide value, they create a community. They really want their audience to win tenfold. If all I get is a sale out of it, like you say, they're $10 versus my $1. So In fairness, if this isn't an element that we can talk about, that's cool. We can always move on to the next one.
So I have my own take about that as well. So for
Sure.
example, like some people say, oh, a lot of companies are exploiting like lower income countries. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
so okay, assuming okay, so sometimes the factory conditions and everything are really tough, and it really sometimes there's really abuse and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. Okay?
I'm just going to interject once, and one thing I really want to point out is that this is not specific to one region. Some regions are worse than others, but these things happen all over the world, and I think that's important to keep in mind.
Got it. So okay, assuming let's say an MNC, okay, a multinational company, let's say okay, let's not name a company, but let's say a multinational company asks maybe Indian workers or Vietnamese workers or whatever to make shoes, okay, and the reason why they do that is because they can get it cheaper labor than in America, right, or in other countries. And I don't see anything wrong with that, because what's the alternative? Would you see, it's a willing buyer, willing seller. The Vietnamese or the Indian or the whatever countries, right? They are willing to work at that pay, right? And they are willing to hire them at that pay. Willing buyer, willing seller. It's okay. What's the alternative? The alternative is that they don't even have a job, and then they don't even have a job. That's even worse, right? They are creating jobs for people, and they still get blamed for, like, all these companies. They're creating jobs for people, and they still get blamed for creating jobs for people. So I don't get that. Yeah.
Right. No, I hear you on that. I think some of it is, a lot of it comes down to relativity. Like when we were just saying, we're cavemen happier than we are now. There are parts of the world right now who have completely remained off the grid, and maybe their experience is more a positive on a day-to-day basis, but they also live in fight or flight more often. You know what I mean? Like if a tiger comes out and starts attacking them, well, that's a pretty bad day. Where conversely, I could wake up today and I can be under stress. I could be in a period of stress for a long time. And so a lot of it is relative experience. Is just because I see things my way, I have to disassociate how I view the world with how they might view the world and the places they're at.
Correct. Yeah. So that's my take about it. Like, to me, it's win-win. If that company employs someone in a country for cheaper labor, it's win-win, because it's that cheaper labor is still better than the alternative, which is not a job, which is even So that's just my take on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I value it a lot, and there's a lot of other factors to this, which we don't have to go too far, because we can get into other subjects as well. But I think some other things to keep in mind too is that people are driven by their own ambitions. We have a large scale immigration. We have people all over the world. They come to other parts of the world because they're chasing different opportunities, because in their mind, they want something more. That ambition is an individual drive. And conversely, we have people here who have all the opportunity in the world and they don't want to do anything. All they want is for the government to give them $1,000 a month, which, by the way, I wouldn't mind.
And that's fine. It's not their fault as well. Like different people value different things in life. Some people value money, some people value success, some people value respect, some people value a happy family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no one's there to judge them and anything. It's just that if you want success, and then you just have to work hard for success. And everyone has their own choices. Like to some people, money really isn't a big thing in their life, and that's fine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I appreciate that, and what I think is, in that view, we do have systems set up where anybody who participates can win. In the system we have, it's not even just yet, but it is still a many steps in the right direction. So I'll leave it at that. Right. Now you have a very long list of testimonials. I went through them and I said, wow, there's honestly, like, I will see testimonials, I'll see a couple of videos here and there, but that was like a book, a tome full of them. And so one of the things I'm going to ask you throughout this, by the way, I didn't even have to ask you once, you just did it anyways, which is like some of the insights and takeaways you've had from the people that you've interviewed. So I'm asking you a similar question here, which is, what are some of the testimonials, some of the people who've studied under you? What are some stories that stick out in your mind of some of the case studies that maybe even they have had somewhat of an impact on your view of the world? Or,
it.
and if not that, conversely, how you had an impact on them.
Got it. So to give a bit of context to the audience, if you go to my website, alaricong.com, you can see like a whole list of testimonials, like literally hundreds of testimonials of people who have been through my sales, marketing, and coaching programs. So a few reasons why the testimonials are there. Number one is because I believe that they've really gotten value. Like more, like to me, I want to make sure that they always get more value than they pay me. Okay. So if let's say they pay me $1,000 or $2,000, I want to make sure that they get, way more value than what they paid, right? So I think so long as you keep over delivering, naturally the testimonials will keep coming. And number two is because they actually get results, because the method actually works. Like I've used the same method to get 1,500 clients. So like when I show people how to do sales, marketing, and branding, like they really learn how to do it, and they're able to get results. Okay. Some testimonials that stand out. For example, I've got a 19-year-old. Okay, right now he's 21, but 2 years ago, when I was coaching him, last time he only knew how to do lead generation. So he was very good at marketing. He was getting leads at like $6 per lead. He could generate hundreds of leads. He had done tons of appointments, but he never had any sales. Okay, like zero sales. So he always wasted money on ads and everything. And then I had a coaching session with him. I showed him how to pitch, right? I have this thing called 5-step consult and a 10-step pitch. So I showed him my whole 15-step process, right? And in August 2019, okay, he made $11,500 in 2 days. Okay, closed a $7,000 deal on the first day of August, closed a 4.5K deal on the second day of August. Now, if you ask me for 19-year-old, I think that's pretty amazing. Okay, now, but that didn't stop there. In December of 2019, he closed $46,000 in sales. Okay, just the first 3 days of December alone, he made about $15,000 plus, and there was just one day alone, he made $17,000 plus. Okay, how he did it was he sell a coaching package, his own coaching package, which was a $5,740 offer, and he sold 3 of that in one day, and in that month he sold about 8 of that. So I showed him exactly how to sell, and I believe his life will never be the same again after learning how to sell. So that's just one. Another one is this lady. She's like 20 something, she's probably about 26 years old this year. Okay, and she wanted to raise capital. So she and her boyfriend were going to buy properties and everything, and they didn't have capital. I told her it's easy to raise capital. So I showed her, all I did was I showed them a YouTube video that I've done, okay, where I raised $50,000 in 15 minutes. Okay, if you actually search YouTube, like Alaric Ong raises $50,000 in 15 minutes, you will see that video. Okay, now, so I showed her that video, and after she watched that video, in 1 week, she raised $100,000. So she actually did better than me. I raised $50,000 in 15 minutes, but she raised $100,000 in 1 week. Okay, and now I look back, I realized, okay, number one, it's because she saw the video and she understood the whole process of how to do it. But the main value that I could give her was the belief that it's possible. Because when she saw the belief that it is possible, right, then she started believing in herself that she could do it. Yeah. So I've helped like property agents. Like the list could really go on and on. I helped a property agent. He closed a $1.8 million property deal within 1 week after the course. He made $80,000 in commissions. I helped a network marketer. He's making $100K a month. Using a 5-step consult and 10-step pitch, he closed 2 $3,400 deals in 1 day. I have a 21-year-old. He spoke at a webinar. In one webinar, he made $21,000 in one webinar. I could go on and on, but like those are the top of my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know that if people want to get like the full scope of what to do, they can check out the video. But I gotta ask a little bit more about how you're able to raise that kind of money in such a short amount of time, and how she was able to do even more of that. So it was really just about like the formula to this, and it didn't seem like she didn't have very much clout going into it, because you're saying that she was trying to raise capital to own property. So somebody at that level only has so many resources available to them. So I would love to hear a little bit more about it. But again, for our audience to understand, the video will give them the full explanation.
Sure. So you can watch the video to watch the full pitch. It was okay. So basically that pitch was 15 minutes, but I taught content for 45 minutes that explains to them about money and explains to them about sales and everything. So if you look at it, the whole pitch was about 60 minutes, okay? But I only pitched the investment offer in 15 minutes and I raised $50,000, okay? So how to pitch is always like, it's like baking a cake, okay? There's a formula for baking a cake. There's a formula for losing weight. There's a formula for everything, right? So basically I just, if you can go look at the whole video, okay, it's public. But basically I shared like why we are raising the capital, okay? How this capital can produce interest and income, and also like I also showed like why I'm doing it and why it's safe to invest. And I think at the end of the day, sales is really about conviction. Like, so long as you have the, like, where people can sense the tone of voice, the conviction, whether,
Right.
you know, like, yeah, I say, I tell you, this one really can make money on, really, no joke, confirm can make money on, you know, right? So just that conviction, right? I think that's the key. It's not so much just a script, but it's mainly, there's two parts of sales, okay? There's the science of it and there's the art of it. So the science of it is like following a script, because you cannot like just drop the price at the start, right? Like, you have to bring them through different like, you know, handle different objections and everything before you drop the price, right? So there's a template to follow, right? But at the same time, there's the art of it, and the art of it is the energy behind it, the conviction behind it, the rapport that you build with the audience, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, and just to revise it one more time, to check out the video for the full scope of it. I guess the one other question that I have before I move on to the next thing I wanted to ask you is, and this probably comes back to what you're saying about the formula too, but to have that confidence that it is going to work out and that the investment is going to follow through. You know, when nobody knows we can't predict the future to the perfect degree, otherwise we would just use the lottery. But where does that conviction come from to know that what you're pitching is going to be worth the investment?
Got it. So okay, so for that investment that I pitched was to invest in my company, right? Which I'm confident that I can grow my company, and I'm super confident I can grow that. Okay, so it was not based on because, like, for me, I actually built my company from zero, like literally zero capital, to $1.2 million in revenue in 18 months. Okay, so it came from so my confidence comes from certainty because of past experiences and all that. Okay, now, but here's the thing. It's a good question you point that out, because sales is not like a method. The what makes a good salesperson might not be the same thing that makes a good mathematician, right?
Yeah.
So it's not so much about logic and everything. Like, if let's say you don't have the conviction, but you still have to summon that conviction out. So let's say if you're selling for someone, let's say you're selling Toyota cars. Even if you're a Toyota salesman, you better believe that Toyota is the best car in the world, even if there are other cars. But you got to believe as a Toyota salesperson that Toyota is really the best, you know? So it's about, I think there's this book by Blair Singer called The Little Voice Mastery, where he talks about sales is about about mastering the little voice in you first. Yeah, once you can master the little voice in you, right, then you'll be able to convey that, or like transmit that kind of energy to the audience. Yeah, but so for me, I only sell products that I absolutely believe in. Okay, I don't sell products that I don't believe in. So because I believe that is important for my soul as a person. Like, it's important that I maintain my structural integrity, because if I keep selling things that I don't believe in, after a while I will start lying to myself, and I just don't like that feeling. So for me, that conviction comes from certainty because it comes from experiences. Yeah, so its confidence comes from competence. Yeah.
And then how were you able to impart that onto the into the client? Because I don't think she had built up $1 million company in her level, so she would have to have a different way to get there.
Got it. So it's different, because for her, she was selling a property investment. So she, like, when you are selling a property investment, the founder, it doesn't matter. It's not like she's raising capital for her company. She's selling a property investment. So long as the property is sound, right? And yeah, so her conviction comes from the property being sound, which is sound, right? And now she's bought her second piece of property, you know, after raising capital again. So at 26 years old, I think that's pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, and that clarifies it a great deal too, because it's in the property sector, and it's, you know, in real estate can be volatile at times, but for the most part, value does increase. So there is a holistic, there's like a collective confidence that comes from understanding the history and the future of that market. So that makes a great deal of sense.
And something that helped was that her boyfriend was a real estate agent. So and yeah, so her boyfriend has the knowledge, you know, and so that helped as well. And one thing is that property in Singapore normally increases in value. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk about a power couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the next one I wanted to talk to you about was your business history. So correct me if I've got any of this inaccurate, but there was food delivery, a sales team lead, sales and marketing agency, an e-commerce business selling cosmetics, and then I guess I forget which part is now present as opposed to past, but now there's your coaching and seminar business. So I usually, this is the kind of question that people start off with. It's like, oh, tell us about your business history. But I certainly wanted to make sure that we got around to it. It is a long story, I'm sure, but I really want to know as much of this journey as you can tell. And, similar to some of the insights that you've collected from like the interviewers and from your own case studies, what were some of the things that stuck out to you throughout this journey along the way?
Got it. Okay, so my first business was a healthy food delivery business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I served the largest bank in Singapore called DBS Bank, and they had over 10,300 employees, and they had like 2 towers of buildings, right? And we served like some of their employees. And then my second business was I led a sales team of 140 people. So that was when I was 19 years old. I built a sales team of 140 people in 10 months, right, from scratch. And then my third business was a sales and marketing agency. So I helped like hotels, or I helped network marketers, property agents to generate leads for their business. Fourth business was a 6-figure e-commerce business selling cosmetics. And then right now my coaching and seminar business.
Okay.
So in terms of the insights I've learned, I've never lost money doing business before. I've never lost money doing any of those businesses before. Okay. And I think one of the reasons is because I invested a lot of money on education. Like I've spent over $100,000 on like seminars and coaching, and like my mom invested in me, right? Before I could afford it, right? And now that I can afford it, I've invested a lot of money in like my own personal development. Going for a lot of business seminars since young. I started going for my first personal development seminar when I was 16 years old to learn about emotional mastery and all this kind of stuff, spiritual mastery and all that. My first business seminar was when I was 18 or 19 years old, okay, by JT Fox, right? And I flew all the way to Hanoi, for 4 days to attend a business seminar. So from learning all those kind of stuff, it made me make sure that when I start a business, I don't lose money. And I would say that it's also in how I structure the deals that there's almost no way I can lose money in a business, because I don't even need money to start a business. Like a lot of people think that you need a lot of money to start a business, but that's not true. Okay, if you don't know how to make money without money, you won't know how to make money even if you have a lot of money, right? So so the insights I've learned. But mainly, I always focus on one business at a time. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, "Oh, what happened to the other 4 businesses?" So I always focus on one business at a time.
Yep.
When I start getting bored, like I'll always have a pros and cons list on whether I should continue this business or start another business, and it will always be very logical. Like I've never regretted leaving any of the businesses I've done before, because it's either the next opportunity was better or something along those lines. But most of the time, why my businesses don't really take off, like my first 4 businesses, they were like 6 figures and everything, but it didn't really like take off to 7 figures, is because of partnership issues. And now because I interviewed like Mike Moyer about slicing pie, and he shared a different way of splitting equity. Now in retrospect, I realized that I'm not a person that can do partnership, like can do equity splits very well. And the reason why is not because I'm bad at equity splits, but because I didn't know how to do it the correct way. So like a lot of people, when they split equity, they'll say, oh, you get 70% of the company, I get 30%, or 50-50 or 60-40 or something, and they have a fixed split, right? So like, let's say if I start off with 60-40, I still end off with 60-40. But here's the thing, nothing is ever truly equal, nothing is ever truly fair. Sometimes people invest, sometimes people put in more effort, sometimes people contribute more and everything, right? So what Mike Moyer proposes is a dynamic split, which means, let's say at the start you own 60-40, okay? But if towards the end of the relationship, one partner is putting in 70% of the work while the other is only putting in 30%, then the split should change to 70-30 along the way. And he has a whole book he wrote about that, where he explains like how to quantify like how much is effort worth, because it's very hard to quantify effort, right? So if you want, you can watch that interview as well. You can search like Mike Moyer and Alaric Ong. You can watch the interview. He talks about equity splits here.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's very valuable to check it out. I mean, like I was alluding to at the beginning, a lot of the people that you talk to are certainly all people that are worthy of being here on Ecomonics as well. To put it charitably for myself, and so what was interesting is that you say your mother was had invested in you, and then you had invested into these. And I can't say that I've talked to too many people who put that degree of investment and resources into seminars, although it does manifest in different ways. I mean, you have people who put that kind of money into a college and university education for the roll of the dice that turns out to be, depending on what program people take. I mean, one thing that I can't help but be skeptical about is some in the way that like drop shipping, this being drop shipping country, has some negative connotations to it. These seminars, they can also have a stigma attached to it that they're pyramid schemes, or that there's not going to be anything actually tangible for the people who attend. It's just a money sink for them. So I suppose that there are ones out there that are like that. I don't want to start pointing fingers or anything like that, but I would like to know is how you were vetting these programs, just to get a good sense of what you were going to get out of it, and then how you were able to personally make sure that you got the most amount of value and most amount of like action and incentive after what you had done. Because one more thing I'll say, and then I'll let you have at it, is 1,000 people can sign up for this, and they can have 1,000 different takeaways. Some people can walk out of it thinking it was a ripoff because it didn't occur to them that they were missing a certain key motivating factor.
Right. So that's the thing about the coaching and seminar industry, and it's one of the reasons why I've wanted to leave this industry for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. As in, like, I feel passionate about coaching. I feel passionate about helping people, but I think this industry, honestly, like nowadays, when I look at a Facebook ad by another coach, the first thought that comes to my mind is scam, and yeah. I think it's crazy. So when I run my own ads, because I run my own ads for my own seminars as well, I'm thinking, are other people thinking I'm a scammer as well? And being a coach, right, is the most closely related to becoming to be called a scammer. Okay, if you look at almost every single coach or speaker, okay, who is in the seminar industry or the information business, who has a sizable amount of clients, they would definitely have people that call them, have bad reviews, and people calling them a scammer and mm-hmm. stuff. And the reason why is because there are a lot of free videos on YouTube and everything, right? But at the same time, so it's a like I can't really fight this point, because honestly, there are a lot of coaches, right? For example, they sell a $10,000 coaching program. And when the students don't get results, they say, hey, you see, my method works. I made $10 million through this method, right? But if you didn't get the results, it's because you didn't put in the work, and that's not my fault, And and that's the thing about coaching, because coaching is like 50% the coach and maybe 20% the coach and 80% the client, right? And everyone's gonna get a different experience. So it's the most closely related to becoming called a scammer. But at the same time, I believe that coaching is such a valuable product, because what I'm selling, or what coaches are selling, is not videos, it's not a one-day course, it's not a 5-day mastermind. At the end of the day, what they're selling is you, a better version of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Like Joseph 2.0, right? So that's I think that's what's valuable about coaching, right? So how do I vet coaching programs? Number one, I look at the testimonials, I look at the case studies. Number two, it's also based on how you vibe with the person. Like, do you resonate with the person or not? Right. And also, I think it's about making an accurate guess. Like, have I made money from learning stuff? Definitely, right? I would say, like, for me, every day I'm learning. Like, just before I was on this interview, I was reading a book about franchising and all this kind of stuff, right? So, but if I were to attribute what I've earned to coaching, I can't really attribute that. I can't say, oh, I make this amount of money because I read this book. It could be a book that I read 5 years ago. So it's so hard to attribute. So I would say that you can't really know for sure which investment is the best investment or anything. Mm-hmm. I would say just the only way to know is to go for it. And yeah. Some people, they'll say, oh, I lost money and all this kind of stuff. So I can't really fight. I can't really debate this point, or I can't really argue on both. I'm trying to be as objective as possible on sharing both sides, because I've been in this space. So, but that's a good insight. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the one insight that I haven't heard before is the idea that I'm buying a better version of me. The idea that I can go in and I can listen to something, because I'm trying to solve problems in my own mind. And sometimes just, being present and not only listening to the speaker, but also, connecting with the other people who are participating in this gives me an opportunity to solve these problems in my mind. Maybe somebody says something in a certain way that reconfigures it. And so this ties into something that I've also felt was really important to, you know, when people will work position and they say, well, you know, I can only pay you a little bit or not at all, but you're getting good exposure. And that exposure, a lot of people, they get so frustrated when they hear that. But I've been in that position where I was paid a little bit of money, but I got a fair amount of exposure. The onus is always on me to extract the value that I need. And if I walk away from something not having extracted the value, I'm not going to blame somebody else for that. I am going to blame myself for that lack of value.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, when you're selling an online course, by the way, I just rescheduled my next appointment to about 30 minutes, for 30 minutes from now. So yeah. Like,
okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was planning on another 10 minutes, but I appreciate it.
Okay, so what were we talking about?
Seminars and getting the value out of them.
Yeah, so for me, I like, okay, for me, okay, if you want to look at like how I learn stuff, right? Okay, I always learn things at 2 times, so sometimes 3 times, and sometimes 3.5 times or even 4 times, which means when I watch a YouTube video, I have an extension, right? I have this Google Chrome extension. Like, the max you can speed up a video is 2 times, right, on YouTube. But I have this Google Chrome extension that I can speed up the video to 2.5 times, 3 times, or 3.5 times, okay? It's called Video Controller. But anyway, so I always consume content whenever I'm traveling to work, whenever I'm going back home. So imagine this. Let's say you travel to school. Let's say you travel to school, okay? Or you travel to work for 30 minutes, okay? And you travel back 30 minutes. That's 1 hour of traveling a day. If every day you just learn you know, at 2 times the speed, okay, that's 2 hours of content, right? That's as much, and in 1 year, that's like 600 hours of content. That's like going for 50 different seminars, you know, on exactly the topic that you want to learn.
Yeah.
So I think it's about knowing. Okay, so nowadays, okay, how I look at it is this. Nowadays, I buy information only to have the relationship with the person. So nowadays, I don't buy information for the sake of information anymore, but I buy information for the network that it gives me. For example, like, sometimes I pay into masterminds with coaches and everything because I know that network, you know. Yeah, so I pay for that network rather than for the information. Yeah, because information, honestly, like, you can really find it anywhere. But another thing that's valuable, other than information, is also implementation. So for example, one-to-one coaching, that's valuable because, like, they really hold you accountable and make sure that you actually implement the steps. Or, like, let's say a group coaching program that you know, they hold you accountable. So in that sense, yeah, so I think it's always up to the learner to extract as much value as possible. But at the same time, I feel that there's a lot of coaches in the industry who are using that as an excuse and saying, hey, it was your fault, you know. Yeah. So and if you look at, let's say, the digital marketing coaching industry, it's become like sort of like an MLM. So like, a coach will coach a coach on how to coach a coach on how to coach a coach on how to coach a coach, and it's just, you know. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that, right? If I coach someone to learn how to fish, to coach someone to learn how to fish, and everyone learns how to fish, what's wrong with that? I don't see anything wrong with that business model as well. So in every business model, there'll always be critics, there'll always be naysayers, but the flip side will always be true as well. Like, there's always the other side of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had my own degree of skepticism even entering into the e-commerce industry, you know, but it didn't take very long before I started getting my paychecks, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, this industry is legit. All right, cool, I'm in a good place. Yeah. So by the way, I listen to like a great deal of content, and I've never like taken the plunge and started listening to content at twice speed. I guess I was always worried that like it was happening so fast that I wouldn't absorb it, but I guess, you know, from your experience and the level that you're at, is that like there really hasn't been any drawbacks to listening at twice the speed. You've been able to effectively absorb the information and no downside to it.
Okay, so here's the thing. When I first started out, let's say when I was about 17, I started listening to content since probably about 17 years old. Right now, I'm about 24 years old, right?
24.
So when people look at me, they say, oh, you're an overnight success. But it's not true. It's like 7 years of, you know, personal development and 3 times the speed, you know? Yeah, okay, anyway. Yeah. So I was listening to things at 1.7 times the speed for a very, very long time, okay? For maybe from 17 all the way until I was about 21 or 22, okay? And then I listened to things at 2 times the speed for about 1 year, okay? And before I started listening to things at 2.5 times, and even 3 times, and even 3.5 times, okay? Now, so the comprehension doesn't drop at all, and you'll be surprised, right, about how powerful your mind can actually be, about how powerful your brain can actually be. Yeah, like, your brain is like a muscle. The more you stretch it, the like it's really like, okay, if you go and try, okay, like you just listen, okay, let's say you know that this is something you're comfortable at, you just increase it by maybe 0.1 times, okay, so let's say if you are comfortable with 1.5 times, try 1.6 times, okay, and then until you become so comfortable with that and you know that you can comprehend everything, then move it to 1.7 times. So it's really like lifting weights. It's like yeah, so it's really like lifting weights. So the comprehension doesn't drop, okay, but here's the thing. Sometimes when, let's say, I'm listening to a topic, okay, so if let's say I'm listening to a topic about marketing, branding, or sales, it's very easy for me to listen to the content because I probably have heard of like 80, like when I learn content related to the topic I'm coaching on or something, I probably know about 80% or 90% of that thing already. So I'm just listening, and sometimes I listen to a 1 hour video just for that 5 minutes of gem that maybe I have not heard of before, right? So it's very easy for me to whiz through the content, right? But if let's say it's a completely new topic that I've not heard of, then I go about 2 times the speed, or sometimes even 1.7 times, or yeah.
Okay, I see. So familiarity and then your own internal muscle memory too helps to dictate the pace at which certain conversations go based on how your prior familiarity. So I think a step one for a lot of people might be to listen to somebody who talks fast, like a Ben Shapiro kind of character, just to get used to somebody who speaks at a faster pace. My girlfriend, I tried showing her a clip of him once, and she was just completely rattled by it. But like over time, she actually got used to listening to him. Not to get into the views of it or anything like that, but he was just like the first fast talker that came to my mind. I only talk fast when I lose control of my thought process. So, or the nervousness gets too far. I try to be like a mellow flow.
Yeah, for me, I have to consciously force myself to talk slower because like I always listen to things at 3 times the speed. So can you imagine when I'm speaking like that right now? To you, it might look like a lot of people say I'm a fast talker, right? But to me, it's slow already because because I'm listening to things at 3 times the speed. So when I speak, this is like half the times that So but
so it's like a quantum shift, right? Like you're in like a 3x speed, and it's like you're going forward in time, and then all of a sudden like your time travel slows down. So yeah, it's funny what it does to the head.
Yeah. So but it's amazing that our ears can listen a lot faster than our mouth can speak. So yeah, so go and try it out. I think you'll like the results. And if you look at it, 2 people, okay, one person listens at 1 times the speed, one person listens at 1.5 times the speed. In the long run, in 10 years, one person, like the compound effect, it's not just the knowledge, but the compound effect of that knowledge is going to be exponential. Like just increasing by 0.1 times is exponential. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One last question about that one. This is just out of curiosity, but if you make time to listen to music, do you keep music on the one-time speed just because that was the artist's intention?
Got it. So for music, I listen at 1 times the speed, but I seldom listen to music. So if let's say I'm traveling, I don't listen to music. I normally listen to like audio content and like seminars and talks and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because that's fair. Like for me, it'll depend on what I'm doing. Like if I have to think and have to type something, it helps to just have like lo-fi music on in the background. But the moment I can throw on the radio, I love my YouTube algorithm because I have my Debutify YouTube account, and everybody that I've interviewed, I subscribe to. So my YouTube algorithm is dumping like 30 hours worth of content every day. And so one of the most fun things that I have is just like listening to previous guests or future guests and just like having all of that content coming in while I'm working on it. So it is a lot of fun coming from longtime listeners such as myself. So cool. So we do have you for some time now. I guess I'll maybe another 10 minutes to go. And so that way you can.
About 10, 20, 30 minutes. About 20 minutes.
Okay. So just give me a second here to calibrate. What do I want to do next? Okay, so there's a couple. Pardon me?
You ask great questions.
Oh, thank you. Well,
you ask great questions, yeah.
I appreciate that. Like I mentioned to I think I mentioned it to you before, and I mentioned to other people. You know, if I'm gonna take your time, I want to make sure that I do the best job that I can. It is my job after all. So there's that. I got some. I guess these one might be a little bit more rapid fire. Because I try to look at like different either like services or elements to your work profile just to add a little something new to the nexus of understanding that my audience and myself have at this point. Out of all of your courses, there's one called the flywheel. And I don't know what that is. And I've tried to picture it in my mind, and it got very cartoonish very quick. So can you let us know what a flywheel is?
Okay, so it's called the Alaric flywheel. Okay,
The
so
Alaric flywheel. Okay.
it's a proprietary thing that I do. So Alaric is ALARIC, right? So it stands for attention, leads, appointments, revenue, invest, and compound. So how I look at it is like in any business, okay, you need to generate attention, right? Like let's say you run ads, or let's say you create content that's attention, right? Then you need to convert them into a lead. So a lead can be an opt-in. A lead can be someone who registers for your webinar. A lead can be someone who opts in for a free book, can be a lead, right? And then after you get the lead, you either turn that into an appointment or an attendee. So if it's a webinar, an attendee for a webinar. If it's an appointment, okay? And then you close them on the appointment, and that becomes revenue, okay? So if you look at every single sales process, okay, it's always attention, leads, appointments, revenue, okay? Almost every sales process works the same way. Okay, so and then the last two is invest and compound. So here's how it goes. So let's say I spend $1,000 on ads, okay, and I generate 100 leads, and I get let's say 20 appointments, and let's say I close 4 sales, okay. So let's say I make $2,000 back out. So I put $1,000 in, and I get $2,000 back out. So I take $2,000, I invest back into the flywheel, okay. So now I put $2,000 in a flywheel. I get 200 leads, maybe 40 appointments, and 8 sales. And now I make $4,000 back out. 4,000, 8,000, 8,000, 16,000, 16,000, 32,000. And with just 10 cycles, I can turn $1,000 into $1,024,000 with just 10 cycles. Okay, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 32,000, 64, 64, 128, 256, 512, and then 1 million, right? So I always tell people that you can scale any business to $1 million, which is what I did, right? You can scale any business to $1 million in revenue with just 10 cycles, right? And if you can do the cycles faster, so for example, if let's say I can put $1 in today and I get $2 back out tomorrow, in 10 days I can be a millionaire. If it takes me, let's say with more follow-up and everything, it takes me a week, in 10 weeks I can be a millionaire. If it takes a month, okay, to turn $1 into $2, it takes a month. If it's a year, it takes 10 years, right? So so that's what I do for my own business. That's why I'm spending about $1,000 a day on ads right now. So we're spending about 30K a month. We're spending about 1.1K per day on ads, sometimes as high as 2.1K. And had I known this concept earlier, I would have invested way more in ads last time. Yeah. So that's basically what the flywheel is. Yeah.
And I don't think it's restricted to like specific business ventures. This sounds like a mindset somebody might want to apply running Facebook ads. A mindset somebody might want to apply if they even sell seminars, sell webinars, stuff like that. I guess let's just say somebody in the audience, you know, they haven't set up their Shopify store yet. Come on, guys! I don't know how much more I can do to motivate you, but let's just say they haven't set anything up yet. What would be an effective way to practice this flywheel idea and maybe even get some returns out of it?
So, for example, attention could be them running a Facebook ad, right, to their Shopify store. Okay? Someone that comes to their Shopify store could be considered a lead, right? Yep. Someone who visits the checkout page could be sort of like an appointment, you know. And then when they pay, it's revenue, and then you just invest and compound it. Or let's say you're selling cars. So you have attention. Attention could be Google ads, YouTube ads, Facebook ads, any kind of ads or flyers and everything. Attention, right? Turn them into a lead. You set an appointment. Could be a car showroom or something, and then turn that into revenue. So same thing for property agents. Attention, leads, appointments, revenue. Same thing for insurance agents. It works for almost any industry. Like before you can sell something to anyone, you first have to get their attention first. In any industry, right? Yeah. So that's basically how you can apply. It's just that the definition of a lead might be different from the industry to industry. The definition of an appointment might be different, but it's the same process that you have to take them through. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like if I were to associate say appointment with running a Shopify store, I think for me an appointment would just be them paying a visit, because now they're in the store. The equivalent of that would be, you know, if they visited a physical location, where they're here, they're using their time, they're talking to me, I'm talking to them. It's about as appointment-ish as they can get under the circumstances.
Yeah. So like for physical business, an appointment is someone going to the shop, right? Yeah. And then if they become revenue, that's revenue. Yeah. So something.
Well, it's a helpful way to think about it, and to continue to calibrate, even in my own mind, you know, the process. It ties into a lot of things that I've had the honor to talk to other people about too. But it's a helpful take on it. One of the things that I happen to wonder about it is, and again, this has got to be specific depending on what business venture somebody's doing. But let's just say I'm putting $1,000 into it. The money wouldn't all be in the retention. I think some of that money has to be invested to make sure that the lead and the appointment, for instance, like running a Shopify store, having the apps effective. So have you noticed like a percentage degree, like 50% in advertising, 70% in advertising, and then the rest of it goes into the other sides? Or have you noticed times where it's more even and the money is invested almost like equally across the different areas? Or if there's areas where they don't really need to, well, I mean, at one point you get paid. So I suppose there is a part where you shouldn't have to pay for that, but
So,
yeah.
so the flywheel is, so for example, a Shopify store is the flywheel. The Shopify store itself is the flywheel. For example, I have an automated webinar funnel, okay? So it churns it churns sales for me automatically. When I'm sleeping is when most of my sales come in, right? So that is my flywheel, okay? So once you develop that system, okay, which you can spend money to develop the system, let's say a Shopify store, you can spend money on the apps and all that. But I'm saying that once you have the system, okay, I'm not sure how much of money you spend on setting up the system, but once you have the system, if you can turn $1,000 into $2,000, you'll be a millionaire. So basically, that's just the concept of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mainly the concept of it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So there's two other ones that I wanted to ask you about along these lines, and I can kind of anticipate that maybe what I'm about to ask is related to the flywheel. So one of them is, your ultimate success formula, which I looked at very briefly, and it's kind of like a flow of where somebody's activity goes and how to like if somebody gets to like a failure point, that's not actually a failure point, it's a learning point, how to like reinvest that. So I wanted to hear about that. And the other one I wanted to hear about too, which is also like the Apollo method. I didn't look into that in particular. It did stick out to me by the name of it. So is that something that we can touch on as well?
Sure. Okay. So the ultimate success formula, I think I learned this when I was like when I was 16 years old at some seminar. Is basically first you have a goal, right? And then you come up with a strategy. And then you take action, okay? And when you take action, there's only two outcomes that can happen. Either number one, you hit the goal, or number two, you don't hit the goal. If you hit the goal, that's success, right? If you don't hit the goal, which most of the time it happens, it's counted as failure, right? But we don't count it as failure, we count it as feedback. So it's feedback that this strategy doesn't work. So what do? We just have to change the strategy and then take action again. Mm-hmm. If we fail, change strategy, take action again. Fail, change strategy, take action again. There'll be one of the strategies, just keep trying and trying and trying. There'll be one of the strategies that work and you get success. So that's basically what the ultimate success formula is. And it's something I apply in my life, right? In everything I do, like when I'm testing a new funnel, when I'm testing a new shop, when I'm testing a new webinar, I just keep trying I just keep trying it. And if it doesn't work, I just change the webinar, change the slides, change anything, and I launch it again. So that's basically what the ultimate success formula is. As for the Apollo method is basically okay, so like my website is theapollomethod.com, okay? Yep. APOLLOMETHOD, right? Theapollomethod.com. So the Apollo method is basically a way for people to set appointments with co-market. Okay, so for example, when I was building my team of 140 people in 10 months, when I was in my second business, I ran out of leads to prospect. Okay, because I prospected all my hot market and warm market, all my family and friends. I had no more family and friends to prospect, so I had to look for the co-market. So I went to Facebook and I used I talked to people, and the first 10 appointments was super hard to get. I took like probably a month to get the first 10 appointments. So I was trying to figure out like which script works, which messaging style works. And after I figure out what messaging style works, I developed this thing called the Apollo method, which is like a script on how to set appointments. Okay. And one of the reasons why it is so effective is because of how fast it is. So like I can send one text, they reply. I send another text, they reply. I send a third text, they reply. By the fourth text, boom, I get an appointment. That's how fast the appointment is. Okay. I've explored other systems where there are other systems where people just blast people like one whole long chunk of text and expect people to reply. And I realized that doesn't work very well. And I've explored a lot of different systems. And like for me, I've developed an upload method so much that because I've talked to tens of thousands of people before, I know exactly what people say even before they say it. So like I know if I say this, they'll either say this or that. If they say that, then I'll reply this. If they say this, so I know exactly how the whole script will play out. So that's basically what the upload method is. It's an appointment setting formula. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, there's definitely a lot here that I think people are well served to check out your content and to study this in depth. As I've said hundreds of times, actually maybe each and every time I've had an episode, is I've got you here for like an hour 10, but people have all the time in the world to check out this content and then speed it up to 1.5 or 2.4 or 2.0. Same value, less time. So there was So there was something else I wanted to ask, and I'll make this the last thing that we talk about today. So we're just gonna we're gonna decompress. So this is a philosophical thing. I briefly looked at your ebook, which was the illusion of right and wrong, and I read as much as I had time to read. Um, the whole book is available to read for free. At least as far as I know, right? Unless I got to like page 10 and then a paywall pops up. But
No, no,
see,
it was
okay,
it's completely free, yeah.
all right, cool. I'd love to hear the premise of this, and I guess like what is the prevailing philosophy of this that is having a say in your decision making process, even on a day like today.
Got it. Okay. So basically, what's the illusion of right and wrong? Just to give the audience a context. If you want to get all these books, you just go to alaric.site/books, /book. Okay. /book or /books. You just try either one, right? Okay. So the illusion of right and wrong was the first book I've ever written in my life. I wrote it when I was 18 years old. It was a book I wrote. It was not a business book at all. It's just a book about philosophy and explaining like what makes something right and something wrong. And I realized that there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's only that right and wrong is relative. Now, right and wrong is not subjective. Right and wrong is relative. Okay. Now, I've gotten in so many arguments with Christians about this before. Okay, because like my mom is my sister's a Catholic nun. Okay, my sister's a Catholic nun in Spain. I actually argued with all their priests and all the brothers over there, and all the nuns over there. Okay, but basically, what that book is about is saying that actually right and wrong doesn't exist. Okay. What makes something right and wrong is a direction that makes it right and wrong. Not what we think is right or wrong, okay, but a direction. So for example, okay, so this book is a 60-page book, so it's like you definitely need to read the whole 60 page, you get a full gist of it. But for example, like left and right can only exist when there's a direction, right? Like if I'm facing you, then this becomes left, this becomes right. If I'm facing the other way, then right becomes left and left becomes right, right? So right and wrong is like left and right, okay? Right and wrong can only exist when there's a direction in the first place. So for example, okay, if let's say I say I want to end human suffering, okay, so that's the direction, okay, then would rape be right or wrong? Rape would definitely be wrong, because unless I can argue that rape doesn't cause human suffering, then I can say that rape is right, okay. But other than that, then rape is wrong, okay. But I cannot. But if let's say I don't have a direction in the first place, if let's say it's in a vacuum and I just say rape is wrong, that's not a true statement, because rape is only wrong when there's a direction in the first place. So right and wrong only exists when there's a direction. So for example, if let's say I'm growing a business, okay, and let's say my direction is to grow a business, then there are certain activities that I do that are right, and certain activities that I do that are wrong, okay. But if I didn't have a direction to grow my business, or if I didn't have a direction to be healthy, or if I didn't have a direction, if I didn't want to have a certain direction, then the right and wrong doesn't exist. I'm not sure if does that make sense?
It does. So, but the one thing that pops out in my mind, and perhaps you've had this argument before, is that so like if you go back a step and you ask about, well, what is okay? So if I want to end suffering, is that not a instance where I am considering the right and wrong, because it's my definition of suffering, for instance? So I think even to have that decision would mean that there had to be a prior direction to that. And so then you get into this direct node backlog where each direction is influencing the next set of directions. So
okay, so that's a good one. So for example, that's why I always believe whenever I look at any debate, if any debate talks about is something right or wrong, that debate is bound to fail in the first place. Why? Because if they didn't have a predetermined direction from the start of the debate, that debate won't even make sense. Okay, for example, if someone says it's abortion right or wrong, that debate won't make sense, because unless you say, okay, if we want humanity to continue existing for the longest period of time, is abortion right or wrong? Or if we want to end human suffering, is abortion right or wrong? So when people choose a debate, they first have to pick a direction that they both can agree on, that is the direction that they want to go. Then only they can debate from there. If not, they'll always be debating in different directions, and the debate will never go anywhere.
Yeah, like I did debate in high school briefly, because I was attracted to somebody on the debate team. Typical high school movie stuff. Didn't work out, but that's okay. I'm happy now, anyways. And I've been in some debates where like I've gone in with the mindset of I'm going to beat this guy, I'm going to crush this guy, I'm going to destroy this guy. And I'm glad I've grown out of that, because it is not the correct way to debate. The correct way to debate is to, like you say, find a direction. I might calibrated closer in my view as like solving a problem. And then I'm using somebody with a different set of views to challenge my thinking so that I can improve it. It gets into politics, but like, you get like a libertarian, you get a liberal, you get conservatives, and you have all these people who have all these different mindsets, and what they're all trying to do is just provide solutions to the problems and challenge each other's weaknesses so that everybody walks away stronger. So coming back to what you said at the beginning, it can be a win-win scenario if everybody understands that. But culturally, unfortunately, there's a lot of that, like, oh, this guy is going to destroy this other guy, and there's a lot of like immaturity in that, which, by the way, I've been guilty of too. So if I can get out of it, hopefully other people will as well.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we can certainly talk more about this, but I think we'll let it go there for now. And then I would love to maybe follow up on this conversation down the line. Give yourself a couple of quarters, and then we'd be more than happy to have you back on the program.
Sure. I mean, we can do another round 2 if you want. Yeah, like another day when I have more time. Yeah.
Well, I unfortunately I got to move on with my day as well. So sure. I am going to wrap it up, but I leave the audience wanting more, right? Yeah. So, okay, cool. All right, we're on the same page there. Got ourselves a direction. By the way, okay, one other thing. Have you considered doing an audiobook recording of this so that people can try listening to you at 2 times speed? Because I think that would be that would be
right wrong.
Or yeah.
Okay. I mean, if there's enough demand for it, probably I'll do it. But to me, it doesn't. Yeah, it's just a philosophical book, and
yeah. I think, well, I think it'd be interesting. It just talking to like listening to content at 2x speed at the pace that you go, and then you try like, how would I sound if I was going at 4 times speed or 6 times speed?
Yeah, yeah, it's really fast.
Yeah. All right. So with that, Alaric Moses Ong, this has been a fantastic conversation. I can't thank you enough, and I've certainly learned a great deal today, and I hope my audience does as well. So the last thing to do is, if you have any final words of wisdom, like a preferred proverb, something along those lines, you're welcome to share it with us, and then let the audience know. Just run through how they can get in contact with you and where they can find you.
Got it. Okay. So I think the difference between rich people and poor people, after like interviewing so many people, is really how they think.
Yeah.
And I used to think that like mindset is not important, but I realized that mindset is really the key. Like mindset is like really 80% of the game. How a billionaire thinks versus how a millionaire thinks versus how a thousandaire thinks is completely different. Okay. So I've got a free resource I want to give everyone, which is you can go to YouTube and then you search Hypnosis by Alaric Ong. I've got 2 hypnosis over there. This hypnosis is something you listen to at night. So millionaire hypnosis. Okay, so the first one is called millionaire hypnosis, where it will tell you like, oh, you're successful, you're entrepreneurial and everything. So like after you start listening, you start believing good things about yourself. You start believing that, hey, you're successful, you're driven, you're entrepreneurial, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then another hypnosis I have is called the sales closer hypnosis, and I always listen to this before every appointment I do. Like the sales closer will tell hypnosis will say like, oh, people are going to buy from you no matter what. It's whether they buy now or they buy in 30 days or they buy 1 year from now. And like people love to buy from you. So it's giving you the right beliefs to succeed in business and life. Okay, so there's 2 hypnosis you can search for. You just search Hypnosis by Alaric Ong on YouTube. And in terms of my social media handles, it's you just search Alaric Moses Ong, ALARIC space MOSES space ONG. Okay. My website is alaricong.com. My Instagram is ALARICONGG. Facebook is Alaric Moses Ong. YouTube Alaric Moses Ong. I'm Alaric Moses Ong on most places. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and my business website is theapollomethod.com. TheApollomethod.com. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, to our audience, this has certainly been an episode where we've gotten into some granular territory and some big picture philosophical territory. So if everything needs to be listened to again, feel free to listen to it again and try out listening to it on a different speed, because you never know, it might actually be better for you that way. So with that, thank you to my guest for being here, and thank you to all of you for your participation. So take care, and we will check in soon.